We will begin with the start of the 1920s. American prosperity rose as new inventions like the automobile opened up new jobs for Americans, and America was able to distribute more products to many places outside the country. Consumer goods redefined society, shifting focus more toward leisure activities and entertainment. This American way of life was projected through the world, but in reality wasn't as great as it seemed. Wages were distributed unequally, and unemployment started to become more prevalent. Labor unions became more demanding. On a more positive note, women's freedom surged at the beginning of the 1920s. Women's organizations worked to have the Equal Rights Amendment passed. Probably one of the most memorable parts of the 20s was the rise of flappers, who went against societal rules for women. They wore short clothing, red lipstick, and cut their hair short, and they displayed their sexuality. In the political field during the 1920s, the Teapot Dome scandal was where Albert Fall, a cabinet member, leased government oil reserves to wealthy businessmen for over $500,000. In 1924, Calvin Coolidge won the presidential election. He redescribed the progressive platform as a blueprint for a communist and socialist America. Civil liberties were also a large part of the 1920s. Images of America were getting out of control. Some things like sexual themes in art were censored. Mail was removed if it seemed obscene. Many immigrants were banned on entering the country. The American Civil Liberties Union protected civil liberties, and the courts became much more involved in these cases, like the cases of clear and present danger, Eugene v. Debs, and the Espionage Act. Going off civil liberties, another aspect of post-war America that divided the country, race. The Second Ku Klux Klan rose up during the 20s, targeting blacks, Catholics, Jews, immigrants, and other forces that endangered the individual liberty. In 1921, a temporary restriction on the immigrants was placed, and in 1924 it became permanent, barring entry of the entire Asian population. The term illegal aliens arose during this time, as many people attempted to sneak into the country. However, race relations and race policy related mostly to pre-existing black Americans. Harlem grew and became more known as a black community, and it was often viewed as a place where white people would slum it in Harlem's dance halls, clubs, and speakeasies. Harlem was known for its poverty and overpopulation. The black population, however, experienced a surge in artistic growth during the Harlem Renaissance. And now we get to the most memorable economic event of the century, the Great Depression. On Black Thursday, the stock market crashed, causing millions of farmers to lose their life savings. Banks went out of business. However, it wasn't the crash that caused the depression. America was heading in that direction for a while now. Banks had been failing, wages had been unequally distributed, unemployment had gone up, dependence on exports to European countries declined because many industries there had recovered from its wartime depression, and farms closed. The Depression transformed American lives as hundreds of thousands of people were out of work. They were hungry and needed to feed their families. Outmigration rose from cities to farms and many people began to protest and riot against the government for not giving them aid. Hoover tried to calm these feelings of unrest, but people viewed him as out of touch and unresponsive. Failures like the Hawley-Smoot tariff, which raised already high taxes, were implemented to encourage Americans to buy American products. However, the Depression took a toll on American society and economy, redefining American freedom and prosperity. During the Great Depression, a man named Franklin D. Roosevelt came onto the scene. FDR became president in 1993, and his plan for the American people was known as the New Deal. The New Deal focused on public works, financial reform, and new regulations for the American people. Let's go into some specifics that FDR was able to accomplish under his New Deal. He passed the 21st Amendment in 1993, which repealed the 18th Amendment, which prohibited the sale of liquor. So basically, the prohibition ended and people could drink again, so that's good. Wait, no. He created the Federal Communications Commission to regulate interstate communications, and he also created the Securities and Exchange Commission to regulate. FDR helped improve roads, schools, and hospitals by creating the Public Works Administration. He also created the Tennessee Valley Authority to build dams and help the environment. The Rural Electrification Agency provided electricity to rural areas as well. Labor and economics was a big issue during FDR's presidency, which makes sense since he was president during the infamous worldwide economic depression of the 1930s. He passed the National Industrial Recovery Act, the NRA, to combat the depression. It reshaped the understandings of liberty, set standards for production, wages, and prices. The NRA affected many industries such as textile, steel, mining, and oil. The Federal Emergency Relief Administration was created to provide welfare to those in need during the Great Depression. Social Security was also a major accomplishment of FDR. Social Security provided old age benefits, more job safety, unemployment insurance, and aid for single mothers and the disabled. Despite how great Social Security was, it did exclude blacks and agricultural and domestic workers. As demand for better wages grew and unions sought for recognition, FDR tried to reignite the hope among the working class. As a result, union membership did rise, but uprise soon followed. Let's go to the thought bubble. Remember the AFL? The American Federation of Labor was an organization of labor unions that originated in 1881. Well, in a walkout led by John Lewis, he created a new organization called the CIO, the Congress of Industrial Organizations. Other groups such as the United Auto Workers and groups of steel workers participated in strikes as well. By the end of the New Deal, FDR passed the Fair Labor Standards Bill banning goods produced by child labor. Although this was good for the children, it caused the economy to decline. At one point in his presidency, FDR initiated a bank holiday to temporarily stop all bank operations. He wanted to create more confidence in the banking system. By passing this Emergency Banking Act, Congress was able to act while the banks were closed. FDR's decision to do this was successful. When the banks reopened, there were many more deposits than withdrawals, and the bank crisis was over. The idea of feminism became more popular during this time as well. They were not excluded from the New Deal welfare. However, the ideal household was still considered to be male-dominated. The power of the rich white Democrats in the South continued to rule over the blacks. So, FDR changed the New Deal so that it excluded blacks to get the votes of the white Democrats. The people hurt most by the Great Depression were the African Americans. They were already poor, and it was difficult for them due to the exclusion from unions and jobs. Now let's talk about communism. Who doesn't love communism? Anyways, by the mid-1930s, the CIO and the Communist Party became the area of focus and started to reshape America's view on freedom. The idea known as the Popular Front was the way of life based on unity and cooperation rather than the pursuit of wealth. The Popular Front also pushed for civil liberties and the rights of laborers. The CIO even accepted blacks into their organization. By the end of FDR's presidency, the New Deal lost support from the Southern Democrats, and he was not able to accomplish as much. Overall, the New Deal accomplished much to deal with the Great Depression. Although it did not create as much prosperity and was somewhat limited, without the New Deal, who knows what America would have been like during this time of economic hardship.
Okay. And just like that, the world busts into another war. Beginning in the 1930s, dictatorships and fascist governments began to spring up all around Europe and began causing trouble. Hitler violated the Treaty of Versailles by arming Germany, and he later annexed Austria and the Sudetenland. Japan moved into China and took prisoners, Mussolini conquered Ethiopia, and Francisco Franco, with the help of Hitler, overthrew the Spanish government. Americans, however, wanted to stay out of Europe and adopted a policy of isolationism. However, as the war started heating up rapidly, America became closely allied with those fighting against the Axis powers. And when the Japanese planes bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the Americans were finally ready to intervene. Let's go to the thought bubble. We declared war on Japan, and then Germany declared war on us. Once the U.S. got involved, the war's tide turned in favor of the Allies, especially after the D-Day victory, where the Allies were able to liberate Paris by August of 1943. The war came at a great cost, though, losing millions on both sides, and especially due to the 6 million Jews who were killed during the Holocaust. The war really changed life at home. FDR created many new agencies, such as the War Protection Board and the Office of Price Administration, to regulate parts of the economy throughout the war. The economy did slightly improve because America was producing so many supplies, and many Americans found jobs in war-related industries. During the war, many women found jobs in previously male-dominated industries, which gave way for a new feminist movement of the working woman, using symbols such as Rosie the Riveter. However, at the war's end, many women lost those jobs. During the war, FDR also stressed the issue of fighting for the 4 freedoms: the freedom from want, from religion, from fear, and from speech. Roosevelt also stressed the issue of an economic bill of rights to help returning servicemen get back on their feet. And in 1946, the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, also known as the GI Bill, was passed. Life also changed for different ethnic groups. Within the U.S., the Bracero program allowed thousands of contract laborers from Mexico to enter the U.S. to take up domestic and agricultural jobs. However, many Mexican Americans felt discriminated against, and the Zoot Suit riots in 1943 reinforced these feelings. Many Indians fought in the U.S. Army, and the Iroquois League even declared war against the Axis powers. The ban on Chinese immigrants was lifted, allowing a quota of up to 105 Chinese people to enter the country annually. But the Japanese Americans suffered tremendously. Due to the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor, the U.S. put thousands of Japanese people into internment camps, which Congress later apologized for in 1988. Blacks did serve in the war, but in segregated units and often doing nothing more than scut work. The civil rights movement began, especially with A. Philip Randolph declaring a march on Washington, which FDR, in exchange for establishing a Fair Employment Practices Commission, forced him to call off. The NAACP membership also grew tremendously. While all of this was happening in the U.S., the war was still happening in Europe and Asia, and Japan was refusing to surrender. Throughout the war, the government was working on a top-secret project, the Manhattan Project, to establish an atomic bomb. On August 6, 1945, the U.S. dropped an atomic bomb in Hiroshima, and on August 9th, another on Nagasaki. Over 140,000 people died instantly, and thousands continued to die years later due to the detrimental health effects of radiation poisoning, which caused many diseases such as cancer and birth defects. Finally, when the war was over, conferences at Bretton Woods and Yalta ended the war, making the dollar the main international currency, but also giving Stalin enough freedom to unfortunately set up a strong communist government in Europe. In 1944, a conference at Dumbarton Oaks allowed the Allies to set up the UN, which met for the first time in San Francisco in 1945. After the war, the U.S. became the dominant world power.
Crash Course is filmed and directed by Stan Miller. The script was written by myself and my high school history teacher. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. And if you stay in my hometown, don't forget to be awesome.